I feel like I sort of missed the boat on this one, and maybe as an academic and a professor, it was never going to be the boat that I should have gotten onto to begin with. But, there's a whole Catholic land movement right now that's taking off like wildfire in this country.
I've certainly heard of it.
The Catholic land movement, it's fascinating. This was a fairly big deal before World War II. It existed under that name, Catholic land movement. You can read about this on the internet. Ironically, that's where you can find out about the Catholic land movement. But then it fell apart in the 60s and 70s, like so many other things.
Why?
Mainly because of that, I think, that sort of post-war, optimistic, humanistic, we're building a better world. We have so much great technology, progress. We're going to end hunger and poverty and war and all this kind of, there was a huge naivete that you can see, and Vatican II fits right into that period. About like, we're going to win modern man over, and he's like ripe for conversion.
And modern man's like, I'm good. Thank you.
Exactly.
Please leave me alone.
Exactly. And so I think that the Catholic land movement died because everybody was just racing to get into the suburbs. They were racing to move to the cities. I mean, this is still a problem, right? Unfortunately, in this country, a lot of rural communities are drying up because the young kids, they're bored out in the fields, the cornfields. They want to get into the cities where it's exciting. And we understand how that process works. Cities have always been magnets for people, especially since the Industrial Revolution. Tons and tons of people moving to cities looking for a better life, often finding a much worse life. But once you've committed to it, maybe you're stuck. You're not going to go back necessarily to the country. So I think there were a lot of reasons why the Catholic land movement petered out. And I'm not the best expert to ask that question to, but in the past 10 years or so, it's exploded into life again. It's been revived under the same name. They now have they have thousands of families who have banded together under this label, Catholic land movement, to, these are all families that are basically working small family farms. Everything from sizable organic farms that are actually the main business of the family to hobby farms of a couple of acres with a few goats, some chickens, maybe some ducks, a pig, whatever that might be, even a dairy cow, and everything in between, right? And these families, these are Catholic families, often large families, that just want to get back to the land. They want to get back to a healthy, natural way of life. I don't think this is a fantasy. There are people who say, oh, that sounds like LARPing, and this is so romanticized, and it's hard work. Everybody knows who's tried to do this, that it's very, very hard work. But the people who are doing it seems to me, if they stick with it, they know it's hard work. They want the hard work. They think it's healthy and natural and normal, especially good for their children. It's a way to give your children, especially obviously I'm talking about older children who are capable of doing chores and stuff, gives them meaningful work that contributes to the common good of the family, work that is economically profitable, work that teaches virtues, hard work, endurance. They learn how to care for livestock. They learn how to plant and grow vegetables. Probably the father or the mother or both are going to have to do some work outside. They're going to have to do something to make, it's not like it's very easy to make a living simply on growing potatoes and dairy farming. But it just seems to me that the fact that there are so many people thinking about this and doing it as well shows me that despair is not the answer. People have to think outside the box. They have to get creative. They have to get busy and try to push back against the hegemony of big tech, the hegemony of, the suburban, boxed-in, car-based virtual reality that traps us. So.
It's interesting you bring up LARPing. It seems to me that those who often accuse others of LARPing, it's quite a cynical take, it seems to me sometimes, because you could look at it in two ways. You could say you're pretending to be what you're not, but maybe you're trying to be who you're not.
Yes.
And that could be called imitation, imitating something beautiful so that your life can be more beautiful.
I mean, how exactly is it that anybody becomes something except by slowly working towards it through a kind of imitative process, a mimetic process, if you will.
You put that so well, yeah.
And this comes up, by the way, I know that we're not going to talk about this much, but it comes up also in discussions of liturgy where people say, oh, the traditionalists, they're just 1950s LARPers.
Yeah.
No, frankly, we don't care about the 1950s that much. I mean, I have a historical interest in the 1950s. I'm interested in what was going on, and the good, the bad, the ugly. Sure. But we are doing what we're doing right now for reasons right now that are completely meaningful and relevant and intelligible to us right now without any reference to any past decade.
Yes.
And that's just simply, living today from the wisdom of the past.
Hallow is the #1 Catholic prayer and meditation app to deepen your spiritual life anytime, anywhere. Go to hallow.com/MattFrad to get the first 3 months for free.
Have you heard of Nietzsche's idea of ressentiment, where you demonize what you believe yourself impotent to attain?
Yes.
I think the accusation towards the trads as LARPers comes from a place like that, right? Because you've got these young men and women who dress in a way that shows that they respect themselves and take themselves seriously and take the act of worship seriously. And so I think to kind of sit back and point a finger at them and sort of mock them really is what you're doing when you call them a LARPer. Maybe it's just because you're jealous, because here they are taking their lives seriously and maybe you're not.
Yes. I do think that's true. I mean, oftentimes people will say, including people who are now very much committed to going to the traditional Latin Mass, that when they first attended it, they felt judged.
Yeah.
They felt judged because they were the only ones, let's say, wearing jeans and T-shirts, and everybody else was in nice dresses and suits and whatever. And maybe they had just a small family, and they saw this family of 12 kids come in, like from the parking lot full of giant vans, and people, they feel initially judged by that. But I think that the mature response is to say, what is that feeling telling me about myself?
Yeah.
Maybe have I made mistakes in my life that I need to repent of?
Yep.
Can I improve? Can I up my game? Maybe I need to dust off that suit or that dress,
Right.
and just. I think that ultimately that, a lot of people do have that kind of change of heart, that metanoia, where they say, you know what, I do need to get more serious about my faith. I do need to, and I know about families, this is beautiful. There are families, I mean, I've read about this, you can find it on the internet too, of families who, because of their encounter with the Latin Mass, decided to stop contracepting and have more children. It's such a powerful witness, right? A witness of life, supernatural life, natural life. That's what we're talking about.
I would imagine the desire to live off the land, as we're talking about, and the desire to return to a traditional form of worship kind of goes hand in hand.
Yes.
It would surprise me if less than 50% of these people weren't attending a traditional liturgy.
No, actually, it's more like 90%.
That's what I would think.
Yeah.
So what is that?
I think that, you could say it on a generic level as a general skepticism towards modernity.
Which is what? What does modernity mean?
Ugh. That's $1 million question if ever there was one.
Right.
It's hard to define modernity in
The synthesis of all heresies?
That's
not
modernism.
Okay,
It's a
thank
different
you.
thing.
Well, help me understand what modernity is.
I think that you could go at this in different ways, but one of the most salient aspects of modernity, and most people would date this to this itself is a debated question. I mean, the roots of modernity are in late medieval nominalism, William of Ockham. They are certainly more proximately in the philosophy of René Descartes and Francis Bacon. The Protestant Reformation period is generally when people talk about the birth of the modern age. And you can find that in, what's the name of that one book? The Theological Origins of Modernity by Gillespie is a really good book on this topic. I don't know if I said his last name properly, pronounced it properly. But I think that one salient feature of the modern age is a skepticism of, and even a rejection of, tradition as normative. And so whether it's the tradition of scripture, as was rejected by the Socinians, whether it was the normativity of sacred tradition as understood by Catholics, which the Protestants in general rejected, whether it was the normativity of scholasticism as a method in philosophy and theology, which all of the modern philosophers rejected to one degree or another, whether it's the normativity of the high medieval synthesis of church and state, of liturgy and agrarian life, which is fragmented and fractured in all the modern revolutions. Something like the French Revolution is deeply and bitterly anti-Catholic, anti-clerical, anti-medieval, anything to do with the ancien regime, anything to do with the world that existed prior to that time had to be destroyed. As Voltaire said, écrasez l'infâme, destroy the infamous thing, meaning the church. So there's just this general anti-tradition, anti-wisdom, anti-sapiential, anti-Christianity, Christendom, anti-Christendom in particular, right? Christendom as the sort of incarnational synthesis of life.
Wow.
And so it seems to me that what we see with modernity is wave after wave of more radical rejection. So it starts with say Luther rejecting aspects of Catholicism, but still preserving a liturgy, still preserving some Marian devotion, still preserving the reverence for the scriptures, right? So he was a partial revolutionary, but then you have then you'll have somebody coming along later who's more revolutionary. You have, I'm kind of jumping around here historically, but a Kant or a Hegel who rejects even more of the preceding tradition and tries to replace it with a new ideology or a new system that is the system to end all systems. And then you have that devolving into, let's say, Feuerbach and Marx. And then once you have Marxism, then that goes into Leninism and Bolshevism.
To think of the quick slip from Descartes' cogito to Hume's, well, I've never experienced the self, so the self has to be replaced with a bundle theory.
Exactly.
Who would have thought that the cogito is up for debate? And then Hume says it is, so does Nietzsche. It quickly unravels.
Yes, that's right. And so my point here in general is just that every century of the modern age can be understood as a more and more radical departure, not only from the wisdom of the past, from tradition, but also from the natural law, from human nature.
Thank you very much for watching that Pints with Aquinas clip. If you like it, do me a favor, click like and subscribe, and please offer a Hail Mary for the work of Pints with Aquinas and all the people we're trying to reach. God bless you.